Through my mother's faith and my healing of the polio, God gave me the gift of healing. And he would speak to me. Now, if he didn't speak to me and tell me, I could pray all day probably and they wouldn't be healed. But it was God working through me. And but one time I said, God woke me up and said, tell your story. And I said, I didn't know what to do. So the next morning, I got up, went to church, and told my story about what I told you about my polio and being mentally ill and all that stuff. And so I told them how the teachers mistreated me. There were 5 teachers in that congregation, and they come with tears, and they said, oh man, I will never look at a student different. I'll never, you have just really opened my eyes to your perspectives. I can't say the word. But anyway, so I thought, and one lady came up, she said, oh, Jean, that was like a missionary story. But then I asked God, I said, God, I want to be a prayer warrior. And so this little boy, this one little boy had this bleeding disease where he bled. I forgot what you call it. I forget what you call it, but he was a free bleeder. And he started bleeding in church, so they had to take him to the altar. They had to take him to the doctor. When they got on the bridge in going to New Orleans, the bleeding stopped. But we had gathered at the altar and we were praying, and a hot streak fell down my back. Y'all just went right straight down my back, and I knew God had touched him. So it was too late for them to come back to church, but they made the point that they were taking him to the hospital, and when he got onto the New Orleans bridge, he quit bleeding. And I felt it with the hot flash. And then there was a little boy named Paul. I don't remember if it's Paul. I think it's Paul. And they had Paul and Joey. They were so close to the same age. They said he had this disease, and that he had to take medicine 4 times a day. If he didn't take medicine 4 times a day, that he would regress and get worse, and it was affecting his muscles. He had climbed up on a ladder onto the roof and couldn't get back down. And he run in front of a herd of cattle, and his daddy had to stretch him back, but his muscles would give out. And so he came in. Bill was preaching on cleansing of the leper. I remember that. And the little boy came in and laid down in front of me. And God spoke to me, and he said, if you will pray for Joey, I will heal him. And God had been doing a lot of miraculous things. So I didn't tell the mother. But the next morning, she called me. And she said, God spoke to me last night and told me before y'all leave, because we were leaving, said to pray for Joey for his healing. So on Wednesday night, we prayed for him, and he was healed. And I thought that was exciting. And then there was a lady come to, I had a little sanctuary in the Crowley parsonage. It was a library, and it had windows all around and a couch. And this lady knocked on my door, and I invited her in, and she was one of our people in the church. And she said, Jean, she said, I need prayer. She said, I'm fixing to lose my husband, and I'm fixing to lose my children. She said, her husband drank, and they had a wreck, and she hit her head, and she was an epileptic. She would take, and so, and also she was born with I can't say the medical, but the water head. Her head was a certain size. But anyway, she had to get on medicine for her seizures, and said, you'll be on the medicine the rest of your life. And she said, being on this medicine, I can't be a good wife, I can't be a good mother. And she said, I just want to be healed. And I said, what do you believe? If we pray for you, you'll be healed? You have that faith? She said, yeah. So we knelt down there, we prayed. And she lost her husband, but she didn't lose her children. But she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you don't have seizures anymore. And so I had her to write me a letter to tell me what the doctor said. And he could not explain it, but he said, you no longer have the seizures. So there you are. And I think the head was not as big or something to do with the head. So God healed her.